All right, Senator, can you tell me the current legislation you're proposing up on Beacon Hill?
Sure, yeah. I filed this session an act regulating self-checkouts in grocery establishments. So this piece of legislation is a new file. We drafted it early this session, and we're advocating for it, and we've gotten a lot of momentum behind it.
Okay, and can you tell us specifically what's in the bill and how it would affect consumers?
Sure. Yeah, look, we see this as a common sense piece of legislation, right? This does not ban self-checkout kiosks in stores. I've had some people concerned saying, Senator, you're trying to get rid of them completely, and we're not doing that. We're just taking a common sense approach to an issue that's been raised by many, many people. Certainly my constituents in the district, people throughout Massachusetts and throughout the country that say, we're frustrated with this, right? We go into a big box store, there's long lines. We have to do the work ourselves now. We have to, scan everything in our cart and figure out how to pay for it, and then, bag our own groceries or goods or whatever it is that they're buying. We're frustrated with that. And what has that led to? Well, we hear from workers who say, you know what, we've been working in these stores for decades, and there's a different kind of tone and temperature now with these self-checkout kiosks. People are frustrated. They're taking it out on us. They're yelling at us. They're upset that there aren't enough registers open. And they need to get in and out, and they're frustrated that they're in line, so they yell at us. We've seen it escalate. It's gone from verbal altercations to places where it's almost gotten physical, and there's just no need for it. And then I would say finally, not only are we focused on consumers, we're focused on public safety, but for workers themselves. I mean, these are not high-paying jobs. These are good, solid, middle-class, working-class jobs. And we just don't think it's right that we have this mentality of kind of wild, wild west of technology where they're just going to throw these jobs away. Our communities rely on these jobs. Families rely on these jobs. Traditionally, it's always been a place where, a working mom can go and make up some hours, or a young person, or even somebody who's, retiring and trying to make ends meet. These jobs are important, and I have no problem saying that we're trying to do everything we can to protect them. So it's a common sense bill that I think is good for consumers. It makes sense for public safety, as well as for workers. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. People have reached out, said that they've been frustrated, and they think it's time that Massachusetts actually puts in some guardrails, and that's what we're doing with this bill.
And what has been the reception up on Beacon Hill of it?
A lot of interest. So this is the first time that we filed this bill. So it's what we call a new file, which means that it hasn't had a chance to be vetted in previous sessions. So we're in the first inning of a long game here. We filed the bill. It got a public hearing. It spurred a lot of conversation. I've been getting text messages and phone calls from my colleagues over the last few days saying, I'm really interested in this. What can I do? They're signing on to the bill. They want to know specifically what the bill does, because they're hearing the same frustrations from people in their districts. So we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this. It's up to the committee themselves, the committee of jurisdiction, the committee on consumer protection and professional licensure. They're the ones that are going to actually vet this and ultimately at the end of the day decide whether or not it moves forward. But there's a lot of my colleagues are pushing for it, and we hope that their voices are heard and this bill moves forward soon.
And have you heard from the industry itself?
Yeah, look, I get it. I mean, they certainly have some concerns. I know the Retailers Association and others, have been talking about the stress and the pressure that many of their members are under in the different stores. I would just say, though I understand the argument, it's a conversation that we're going to have to get it right. Ultimately, what we have now is just this unchecked embrace of technology that increases their bottom line and profits at the expense of consumers and at the expense of workers. That's not acceptable, from my perspective. And I think when we think about the retailers, a lot of us, think about our local hardware store. I can actually go in, it's a mom and pop operation, and there's somebody there that I can be able to talk to if I have a question, or, to have that interaction with. A small grocery store, a small bodega corner store, where you can actually go and build a relationship with the person who's working the checkout desk and cashes you out. But ultimately, where we're seeing the problem isn't that these mom and pop operations, they're not these small family run stores. It's the big box stores. right? And it's many of them are multi-billion dollar global corporations that are making more and more money by the day. And unfortunately, consumers get less service. People get frustrated. The lines are longer. It is impossible for some people to try and figure these things out that maybe aren't as tech savvy, especially older folks as they go into these stores. And then they turn around and there's nobody there to actually talk to. They don't have the option to be able to go to a traditional cash register. Um, that is a problem that I think we can address by putting in some guardrails. Again, we're not trying to ban self-checkout. I am a tech guy through and through. I understand that that is the technology that we have presently, and that is the future. I get it. I get it. I've had many, many conversations with my colleagues about that. However, I think as policymakers representing our constituents, we can be deliberate about where we go, right? We're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads. We have cars driving themselves on the road, right? You have all sorts of technology that's being employed on a rapid basis. We think it's smart as policymakers to just kind of slow that down, put in some guardrails, not to bankrupt anybody. And I challenge the Retailers Association to tell me any of their big box stores that make billions of dollars across this globe, how close they are to actually going out of business because we're going to regulate self-checkout. I just don't think that's a valid argument, but that we're actually going to put in some guardrails to limit the use, not get rid of them, but give people the option that if they do go to a store, they don't have to check themselves out and then bag their own groceries and do everything else on their own and have nobody to talk to or turn to if they have any questions or any issues with the self-checkout. Just put some guardrails in, limit the use, make sure that there's somebody there, limit them to 8 per store, and that's something that we can discuss going forward if that's the right number or what that may be. Happy to have that conversation. But also make sure that for every 2 self-checkouts, you have a traditional one. You have somebody there who's actually doing the job to give people options. And then finally, if the people are using self-checkout, oftentimes the machines don't work correctly, or maybe they're having some technological issues and understanding what to do. They should be able to have somebody there that can help them through it. And unfortunately, what we've seen, and it's been my experience and that of my constituents, is that anytime they have trouble with the self-checkout, or if it's not going like it should, they turn around and there's just nobody dedicated to actually helping them out. Or they're there, but they're taking care of 10, 15 machines, and then they're doing other things, cleaning the floor, stocking the shelves, or dealing with other customer issues. So it's a good common sense bill. Again, not trying to, do too much with this. Just put in smart, common sense guidelines for the use of self-checkout that is good for consumers, good for public safety, and good for working people.
And has this been done elsewhere? I feel like I've seen in California, there's some towns or local bylaws kind of.
Yeah, we've seen, I think, local ordinances. I don't think we've seen any state jurisdictions attack it in this way. But there have been local ordinances, and I think, the problem that you have, and as I look at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have 351 cities and towns. You can't have a patchwork of 351 local regulations in the way that you handle this. Number one, the retailers would probably argue against that because it doesn't give them the stability or the things that they need to be able to compete across the state. And number two, it's just not a smart way to do policy. We think if we can address it at a state level and take that pressure off of the municipalities, that we can give stability to the industry so they know exactly what to expect. But then we can have one standard across the state so that if you go into a store in the Berkshires or you go to a store on Cape Cod or in my district, in Foxborough or Attleboro, that you can have the same expectation that there may be self-checkout available, but you're also going to have somebody there, a working person there that you can actually talk to or go to for help. I am not apologetic at all about saying that, we are in a moment in time in this country where, unfortunately, I think many people feel like we can just throw away, good middle-class jobs for the sake of technology. Again, I support technology in many, many ways. I think it makes our society and our lives better in many, many ways. But as policymakers, as people that are, trying to figure out what's best for our state going forward, I think we owe it to our constituents and we owe it to ourselves, quite frankly, to be honest. And to be honest and say, are we a better state? Are we a better Commonwealth than Massachusetts if we take a lot of these jobs, again, working class jobs, and just say, sorry, they don't exist anymore? Not only am I taking your job away, but when you do return to the store to try and buy your groceries for your family, you're going to be doing the same work. You're just not going to be getting paid for it. That's just absurd in my mind.
All right, great. Is there anything I missed or anything you want to add? I feel like you covered it.
Yeah, I think we hit it all, Chris. I appreciate it. I would just say we're really, really focused here on those aspects of it. Again, those common sense kind of guardrails that we're putting in place, just putting
Yep.
in limits, open to having the conversation with the retailers as I always have, but there is an incredible amount of frustration out there from people that are going to these big box stores, forking over incredible amounts of money, especially these days with inflation the way it is, and getting less and less service when they're there. We think that is a primary focus of this bill. And again, like I said many, many times on this, about protecting those workers who don't have a lot of other places to choose from these days. We want people to be working and contributing to our communities. These are those jobs that allow them to do that.
Awesome, Senator. Appreciate your
Great.
time.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Chris. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thank you.